who played Count Dracula on screen more often? Bela Lugosi, John Carradine, or yours truly? The answer, surprisingly, appears to be me. Yet if you ask someone to imitate Dracula, they don't do vocal impressions of John Carradine or me, thank heaven. No, 40 years after his death, Bela Lugosi's face and voice are inexorably linked to his most famous role. After Dracula, he seldom got the chance to show his versatility, his range, or his sense of humor.
Go, never dreaming I care, loving somebody somewhere, leaving me my silent love.
Betty, you have booped your last boop.
The biggest misconception about my father really is in the focus of everyone's knowledge and attention about him in the later years of his life, which were obviously not the best years of his life. And so that's what most people know about my father. They don't know about his glorious early years and the middle years where he was so successful with roles such as Dracula, and how he traveled the world and how well he lived.
You see, in the National Theatre of Hungary in Budapest, all the great character parts are played by 4 or 5 different players. Each competes with the other. Each plays the part in accordance with their own conception.
Lugosi was known as the ladies' man, and he was probably the most sexually attractive male I have ever known in my life. He could walk into a room and there was this pull from every corner, and women just flocked to him. And I thought that was sort of funny, although I could feel it.
I am Dracula.
He toured with the play for nearly 2 years, but Universal Pictures wanted Lon Chaney, who had played a demonic vampire in London After Midnight. Chaney's death in 1930 opened the field to others.
Lugosi had made his test for Dracula before he put together a company to do the stage version of Dracula. And I was Lucy to his Dracula in that company, and we got as far as the Lovero Theater in Santa Barbara when he was called back being told that he had the part.
Dracula? Oh, what's he done to you, dearie? Tell me.
He came to me. He opened the thing in his arm, and he made me drink.
The Spanish version of Dracula that was shot at exactly the same time, and with essentially the same script, it turns into parody. So one sees by comparing those two films how much Lugosi really brought to the role.
The follow-up film was to star Lugosi under the direction of Robert Florey, but Universal decided to cast Lugosi not as Frankenstein, but as the monster, then conceived as a vicious, unthinking brute.
My father told me that he actually turned down the role of Frankenstein, after which it was offered to Boris Karloff. And what he told me is the reason that he turned that down was because it had no lines, and he felt that grunting and doing the various gestures that Frankenstein did was really misuse of his talent. He also said he was very sorry he did that as a career move because it created one of his best competitors.
Murders in the Rue Morgue became the consolation prize to Lugosi and director Robert Florey. It provided both an opportunity for atmospheric expression.
Dr. Miracle, in the Rue Morgue, is guilty of 4 murders so far this week, and by now perhaps a 5th.
In 1932, Bela starred in the independently produced thriller White Zombie. And even though it was not a universal production, the film's producers rented leftover sets from Dracula.
Zombie! Allez vite! Allez!
What are you studying now?
I'm studying now American slang. I know how to say okay and cat's whiskers and baloney and how.
It is quite clear that Lugosi had a command of the English language, yet he never lost his distinctive Hungarian accent. The longest lasting of his 5 marriages began in 1934. Lillian Lugosi was more than 20 years Bela's junior. His domestic attitudes were apparently very European, very 19th century.
Ready for the test, Dracula? I'm ready, Frankenstein. Then let us begin. You understand, Bela, don't you? That the one who wins this little game of chess is to lead the parade at the film stars' frolic. Okay, Boris. Your move. Right.
Universal teamed Karloff and Lugosi together and thinking it would be good box office. And the first picture they did together was The Black Cat. And they were pretty equally billed, shared the same amount of screen time. They went on to do The Raven after that. And clearly Lugosi is the star of the show. Karloff's in just a few scenes. But yet Karloff received top billing. And finally, they teamed together for The Invisible Ray. After The Invisible Ray, Lugosi never had a starring role at Universal.
You're poisoned. Poisoned? And everyone I touch is poisoned. They die. If your men fail to capture him at the gate, and at midnight we bolt all doors and darken the entire house, his face and hands will appear like phosphorus.
And if he touches anyone,
they die.
There was a kind of a competition between Karloff and Bela Lugosi. Not that they were aware of it, that they masterminded or deliberately contrived, but the two men were I guess, symbols of that kind of horror picture at that time.
Well, it was Christmas time, and in those days they decorated not with Olympic banners, but with stills of the various stars blown up and a circle of Christmas lights around them and tinsel. And it was just when there had been the big smash hit of Frankenstein down the street, and came to the Karloff one, and he stopped and he bristled and muttered some things in Hungarian and hissed a bit, and we said, but after all, you know, Karloff could never play Dracula. And he said, that was right. But I think since he had tested for the monster, I think he felt sad that he didn't have it. It's again one of these strange situations where he was so good. I wish he could have had the chance to do some of these other parts.
Great Britain banned horror films altogether in 1937. Hollywood ceased production of this type of entertainment. Lugosi was unemployable for nearly 2 years.
I believe when I was born in 1938, those were tough financial times for my father. He hadn't worked for a while steadily. I heard that those were tough times for him. But what I remember from my early childhood is that he always provided a good life for me and my mother and himself.
Universal hired Lugosi for a paltry $500 a week, far less than co-stars Basil Rathbone and Boris Karloff. Director Roland V. Lee was so incensed that he extended Igor's importance to the story and thus Lugosi's salary. The film was released in 1939, which proved to be a good year for Lugosi, and returned to England for one of his grimmest films, The Human Monster, also called The Dark Eyes of London, from a story by Edgar Wallace. This was the first horror film that I ever saw. I was, 16, 17, something like that, barely old enough to see this kind of picture legally in Britain. Lugosi takes psychotic delight in eliminating his enemies.
Have been writing on little bits of paper. The police have been here. They might come back, Lou. They might ask you questions. You're blind and you can't speak, but you can hear. And that will never do. What are you waiting for? Do as I've told you.
You kill